Hi everyone, this is Eric here from Healing Relationship. This is our weekly recorded session where every week I have a special guest and we have a conversation and an interview around topics about relationships, self-empowerment and healing. The core of my work is I believe that the relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship you have. So today I have a special guest, Nikki Holli. She's from Vancouver. And thank you for accepting my invitation, Nikki.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So here's how we met. I met you through Instagram, actually, and I have found that you have a very fresh perspective on dating, on modern dating, and how to bring authenticity in dating. And you know, today dating is one of the topic where a lot of people struggle because with this booming of dating app, it's absolutely changed the game. And I think people are really disconnected and feel that they don't know how to use dating app and they don't know how to connect in real life anymore. So I'm very excited that you can give us a fresh perspective on that. And one thing that I also love, it's we are from two different generations, right? You're younger than me, obviously. And I grew up in France with a totally different culture. So I'm hoping that we can bring that together and see how the conversation goes. But before we start the conversation, let me introduce you properly, Nikki.
Yeah, thank you.
So Nikki is a life and relationship advice enthusiast. Her journey with changing her internal and relational patterns inspired her to spread the courage to care about emotional growth, making conversation about feelings cool again, and the importance of developing our relational selves. Dare to Care Now is her passion project on Instagram, and this is where you'll find her nerding about self-help, about relationship, and this is how you can connect with Nikki, actually.
Yes.
Did I miss anything, Nikki?
No, that sums it up. I am a self-help nerd, and you can find me there.
Yeah. So before we start, I'd like to ask you that one question that I ask everyone is, how did you come to do what you do? What is your experience? How did you decide to become a relationship advice enthusiast? I love the title, by the way.
Thank you. And this is really just a transition because I will be applying for school to become a therapist. So this is in the interim. I became really passionate about doing my own research in my own time, buying a ton of books about self-help for relationships. And honestly, it just started from growing up in a family where discussions about feelings, discussions about relationships was not part of the family culture across the wide span of generations. And I saw it play into my own personal relationships and ended up being just feeling like I needed to do something different and fell in love with the whole industry. Started following a bunch of people on Instagram that do this, that nerd out about self-help. And I already had been spending time in my spare time writing my own material and thought, why not put it out there and see what happens?
That's beautiful. And I can witness that whatever you write on Instagram, it always comes. That's what I like about you, Nikki. It always comes from a place of authenticity.
Thank you.
So it's really refreshing when we see a post like that. So tell me, what about the dating scene today? What is your experience about dating and how did you came to the conclusion that we need to bring more authenticity into that?
I think from conversations with friends, I think one of the most common things, maybe you've had this experience, I don't think it's generationally constricted, is that people often ask like, what do I say? How long do I wait to reply? Or what kind of first date should I go on? When should I do this, this, and this? So it's just sort of like, well, what do you want to do in those situations? I don't think there's really advice across the spectrum there that you can give somebody. I really do think it is just bringing forward your real self. There's no life hack to dating, but we all are kind of looking for that. And I feel like especially in my generation now with appearance being so important, people keep wanting to put forward the specific version of themselves that is very likable, checks all the boxes, and is perfect. And dating really isn't like that. It is just about being authentic to who you are, whatever that may look like.
Yeah, no, that's great. I totally agree with you. But, you know, I grew up in France. I grew up in Paris. So my culture is about flirting. it's very different than what we have in North America, right? So when I grew up and I wanted to meet someone, I go to a bar, I go to a party, and I start talking with someone, and I'm not trying to be myself. I'm trying to be flirty. I'm trying to seduce. So there is this game of seduction. So what's your take on that? Because now what I see here in Vancouver, for example, which is the West Coast, with probably a bit different than the rest of North America, but it's really about checking boxes. That's how I experience that myself. So what is your take on that?
That's a really good question. I mean, I do think, of course, flirting has to be inherent in all dating. And I think that, say, for someone like yourself, if you're putting yourself out there as like, I'm a very touchy-feely person, I'm just very flirtatious, then what I mean by authenticity in dating is, number one, don't hide that. That's who you are. And your perfect, sorry, not your perfect partner, but like a partner that's a great fit for you would find that endearing, would be excited to take you out somewhere to a public event and be like watching you work a room and chat with other people, and they would feel enamored by that. But the thing is, if you end up, you know, either hiding that part of yourself and then it comes out later in your experience, like maybe for the first few dates, you're like, oh, the culture here is cold, so I shouldn't be flirtatious, I shouldn't do this. Well, the thing is, eventually it's going to come out at some point in time during your relationship. So why not bring that part of yourself forward at the start and not have these preconceived notions of like, well, this is what someone is looking for, so I should be this. I just think it sets you up for failure, and just it's that scarcity mentality in my mind.
Yeah.
You know,
no,
your person
absolutely.
isn't out there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. So how can you be yourself and at the same time playful and at the same time curious about the other person?
I think a lot of it is sort of setting these intentions before you even go out dating. So maybe thinking about, well, who am I in the dating world? What am I looking for in the dating world? Because I feel like if you have a really strong sense of your own self before going into something, and having a really strong sense of self in terms of what are you looking for, what are the total no on my list, I don't want to date that. Again, when you go with this really purposeful, confident interaction instead of just willy-nilly dating and being like, oh, we'll see what happens, I think that that's where the playfulness will come from, because you're so okay with being who you are and being present with the person you're with, and really checking to see, do we really vibe, instead of being all up in here and working off these checklists. So do the checklisting before you even get into a dating situation, where just be certain of who you really are and bring that with you.
That's a great advice. I think always when you're being intentional in life, it's when you you put the energy on the intention, and then you attract that kind of intention, right? Yeah. And for me, it's in my experience, it's setting intention, but it's also not being attached to my intention.
Yes.
In a way that I'm not attached to an outcome. So if I meet someone and I meet for the first time and I'm going on a date, I do set intention, but then I forget about my intention, and I just go with the flow, and I just be with the person and see if I'm curious about her and if I'm excited when I'm with her, right?
Yeah.
Is that your experience too?
Yeah, I would say I do a very similar process before I go on a date. I mean, in the past I didn't, but nowadays I do put the intention before I go on a date with someone, and I think about, what do I want this interaction to feel like? If I know I get this sort of feeling in my heart where I'm like, nope, this is just a friend person, or whatever it might be, is like I really do follow that. But same as you, I once I'm in the room with the person, I'm just so curious to get to know who they are, that sort of goes, you know, out the window. It's kind of like when you prepare for sports, right? People always say, visualize, you know, I used to be a pitcher, so I would go to classes for pitching a ball in baseball, and so we'd go through all the motions, but like when you step up to the mound, forget about it. Don't be up in here trying to remember all the things you practiced. You will just fluidly go through it because you've already done the steps.
Got it. So it's almost I hear you saying that your intuition is really important in that process, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how do you use your intuition when you go for dating, or how would you advise people that were listening to this interview about how do you know that if the person is the one for you? I mean, I don't believe in the one for you, but you know, someone that you can build something or that you can be curious to go on another date. How do you do that?
I think there's a few things. That's such a great question. I think in terms of intuition and things that I've found recently in my own experiences of dating is, I think more or less from the first few minutes of an interaction, you have an idea, you have a gut feeling. Either it's a gut feeling of, ooh, we are so not well connected. Either there's no it's just a feeling. You can't really put a lot of words into it. It's later that you start rationalizing that feeling that you originally had. Usually, like, say I've been on dates where immediately I'm like, I don't know, 30 minutes into a conversation, I start thinking, ooh, we could be really good friends. But because we're still jamming out so well and connecting so well, and they have a lot of these qualities that I, intentionalized out there in the universe, during my date, I might confuse it to think, okay, like, I'm just jamming out with this human being. We'll see where it goes. It's when I get home where I start thinking, ooh, I think that was more of a friend connection than someone who will move forward with dating. And so if that is the case, either I'll give them another chance for another date and see how I feel. But truly what I've found more often than not is my initial gut feeling in those 30 minutes will always be true. I'm not saying you can't enjoy this person and keep connecting with them. Like, don't just drop the date while you're on it. Yeah. But it's learning to really dive into trusting those feelings, because sometimes I do think if you don't, you might end up in a relationship with that person and even at the beginning be like, I feel like we're more like friends, but you're so confused because you haven't actually taken the time to think about why you feel what you feel.
Okay.
Does that answer it? Did I miss anything?
Yeah,
I feel like there's two parts
it's great.
to that.
It's a great answer, actually. And how do you avoid disappointment? Because sometimes we go on a date, we go after another date, and then suddenly we say, well, this person, no, this is not for me, or something like that. I mean, men do that with this is not for me. I don't know how women do that, but how do you avoid disappointment? How do you deal with disappointment?
I think it, again, is having that strong sense of self to know that there's going to be more. It's okay that this date didn't go great, or maybe focus on the things that really did. Like, take an inventory after your date and be like, okay, what did I really enjoy about this human being, or what did I really not? And it doesn't have to be this time. Like, sometimes people go into it thinking, oh, I just wasted a couple hours with this human being. Or maybe if it's the typical male dynamic where they pay for the date and they're like, oh, I just spent $100 on this date that didn't go well. Well, okay, it's not wasted time unless you make it wasted time. So exactly. What about it can you take away from it that would be helpful for you in the future? And I think that helps eliminate the feelings of discontent afterwards. And it's okay to feel discontent after a date. It does suck, when you get so excited and you thought it was going somewhere, but there's still things to take away from it as well.
So self-reflection is something that we need to consider after a date, or even during the dates, just to see how we feel about the connection and how what do we want to bring, and what does it, what kind of information does it give us about us, right?
Yes.
About our relationship with ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So any other advice that you can give to people around that to really bring authenticity? Because I think one of the thing is some people, they are, as you said, in their head. And when they go on a date, if they feel an attraction or something, is, do I need to tell him something? Do I need to call him? Do I need to tell him that I like him? Or do I just hold back and wait, this old game? So yes. What's your take on that?
I think a part of me, truthfully, is still figuring that out. And I think that's okay, because I think we all are. But some things that I have really thought about in those cases is, again, it just comes back to what's true to you. Because the thing is, say, if you're someone who is very forthright in how you feel, and you love just over communicating with people about how you feel, or maybe you're someone who is kind of withdrawn, well, if you try to force yourself to be something you're not because you're trying to play the game and you're trying to figure out what they want from you, well, you're compromising who you really are. And so if it is your style to come out and say hey, look, I'm really enjoying this and I really like you, 2 dates in, well, go ahead and say that. If that scares them away, then they're probably not going to want to continue dating you, and that's not a bad thing, because it frees up space for you to date someone who will look for someone who does communicate in that way. Maybe their love language is words of appreciation as well, or affirmation. And so they're like, yes, this is totally a connection for me because they came out and said how they really felt. I was waiting for that moment. But your person is the person that vibes with that. And you see how if you hide it, you're doing really a disservice to yourself. So I just don't really, to answer your question, I don't think I really believe in playing the game.
Got it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I know for me, for example, if I really connect with someone, I will end up texting them a fair bit, like long paragraphs. I won't play a game of like, how long did he take to reply to me? How long were his texts? I just freely text how I like to text or talk to someone. And that usually helps me eliminate people, because if I'm not getting the kind of connection back in terms of our conversation, it's going to be a no for me. But if someone is vibing in the same type of communication as that with me, then I'm like, okay, let's keep moving this forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's another thing that I was thinking. It's sometimes we have a hard time saying no, or saying, you're not the right fit for me. And how do you handle that? How do you do that? And especially for me in Canada, it's very different from France. In France, we say what we want. If we don't like the person, we say, it's not about that. Here, I find it people are very polite. So they won't tell you if they don't like you. You would have to ask the question, and then they will answer to that.
Yeah. So I think what you're really speaking to is ghosting.
Yeah, ghosting, yeah.
Ghosting. So I did just write a post recently, and I've been having this conversation with girlfriends about ghosting for a while now, because I've been in the dating world for, 2 years now. Mm-hmm. And so I have encountered a fair bit of it, but I made an oath to myself, Nikki, you are not allowed to ghost. And I'll tell you a few reasons why I'm very passionate about the concept of ghosting and not engaging with it. And I'm just on the same page as you. I think that it's so important to communicate with people, even if it's an early interaction, to make sure that you give them the courtesy if you don't want to move this forward. And even more than that, like, yes, we could say it's about the other person, like, yes, have some courtesy, because I feel like in a lot of cases, people might be like, well, why bother? Like a one-on-one date with them. I don't owe them anything. I kind of think that you do, because you agreed to connect with this person to either talk to them, go on a date or two. And so if you started the interaction, it's partially your job to end it. But more so than that, we're all selfish creatures here. So we're like, what's in it for me? I think the benefit of not ghosting and telling someone how you really feel is like, think about it, Eric. If you can't even tell someone that you barely have a connection with yet, that you're not interested, you can't have that little difficult conversation. I can't imagine what kind of difficult conversations you're avoiding when you are actually involved with someone and there's real things on the line.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
It's like, why not start practicing with someone who you barely connected with?
No, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I think also the dating scene is also a really good way to practice our communication skills and how we relate with ourselves. So if we have a difficulty to communicate with that, I do believe that it's an opportunity to practice that. And
I agree.
I used to take a lot of things personally long time ago. I'm over it now. So if I say something to someone and they don't like me for some reason, I just understand that it's about them and it's not about me. And that's okay if they don't like me.
Yes, absolutely.
No problem with that. But I think a lot
more about them than you in that moment.
Exactly. But a lot of people also are so craving for connection that they don't know where is the fine line where they want to believe that there is something possible. Or maybe they want to believe that there is a potential. And a lot of my clients, when they come to me and they have difficulty in relationship, they are very annoyed because they think, oh, but there is so much potential. If only he could change this, or if only he could grow, or only if he could do that, right?
Yes.
And in my experience, and I want to have your take on that, is I never bet on potential anymore again. I do tend to see what is in front of me now and what can I create now. And if there is something possible from this moment, this present moment now, then I'm okay to commit, then I'm okay to engage with someone. And I don't need someone to be perfect. Don't get me wrong about that, right? But I need to see that something is possible now, not if 6 months, not after going to therapy, not after, you know what I mean? So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that falling for potential, and hey, I have done it. That's probably one of my worst habits in dating in the past was falling in love with potential. And if anything, I just think there's a lesson there about ourselves, and I think I'm still trying to figure it out too, so bear with me. But I think the lesson is maybe then where are you lacking potential? Let's turn it on ourselves. So instead of fixating on like, well, what could they change? They would be so perfect if blank. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's turn that inward for a moment. Because a lot of times we do end up externalizing our feelings onto another person to avoid our own work. It's very distracting. Blaming is so much easier than going inward. And oftentimes when we make adaptations to ourselves, our partners have to dance with us. Mm-hmm. And so they might, maybe, work on some things that you feel like are important to you, but really the end goal is not to change them or to handle their potential. It's, well, how am I maximizing my own potential? What's important to me? And either they'll dance with you or they won't. And at the end of the day, if you're falling in love with potential, it might also mean that, number one, you have a scarcity mentality about dating, that you can't find someone who checks off more boxes, or two, you have a pattern of criticizing other people and only focusing on their flaws. I feel like there's a few more in there.
Yeah, for sure. So almost what you're saying is every time you date, whether it works or whether it doesn't work, it's an opportunity for yourself to understand better about yourself, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I love that. That's the core of my work. So I really love that. And I had a question, and it popped out, so it will come back.
It'll come back.
Yeah. So what else can you tell us about authenticity in dating, and not only for the first date, but after a few dates, and you really feel that the other person is someone that you can build something, that you can hold space, and could be like a good support or a good opportunity to grow in the relationship. How can you be sure that every moment you're going to show up with your true self and with authenticity to others?
That is a great question, because I feel like once the dating does, we can do all this work when we're just ourselves alone, and it's a lot easier to control that environment. But once you get in with someone else, all your patterns start changing once we're in a dyad, right? When we're in a pairing. So I think just, how it's so easy to fall into the hormones are going and you want to hang out all the time and you forget to check in. So as we already said, self-reflection is so important. I think especially early on in dating, midway through dating, I'll focus on the early because I think that's what you asked, is so things have gotten off on a great foot and it seems like all is going well. I still think it's important to take a day of the week to check in and ask yourself, okay, what am I loving so much about this? How can I still preserve my own self and my own identity in this relationship, and set up all these patterns right away so that later down the line we already have that healthiness going. So starting off communications early is really important too, I think. So for example, it's like if in dating maybe you are not really a texter and you have been texting your partner because you're like, okay, it's fun for now, it's not really who I am. So early on in dating, maybe just telling them, hey, do you think an end of phone call or end of the day phone call, could we do that instead? And starting to learn how to compromise, learning how to speak your truth, have your boundaries right off the bat, and just keep asking yourself questions and being curious about what you need and how to set it up at the beginning.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I also think that there is a difference between men and women, of course, and that was the question that came out earlier. Is what do you think is the main difference between men and women when we date, and even when we are in a relationship?
Oh, interesting.
I'll give you my take on that after.
I would actually be curious for you to start it, and I will think about it as you answer it, because I don't know.
Okay, yeah. I think for me, in my experience, the main difference is women are looking for connection. Okay. And the women most of the women, let's say, are able to express themselves, and they want to express how they feel. And
generally, there are definitely some women who don't.
Yeah, but most of them, let's say, that's a pattern that you can see. Women, they like to to talk. At least when, you know, even if it's not with your man, but when with your girlfriend, you have a tendency and a need to express yourself and to express how you feel. You're more in tune than men. I mean, not all the men, but you're more in tune with your feelings, you know, generally speaking. Absolutely. So then men, the big difference is we are more internal. So we don't like, and we are not used to talk about feelings and about how do we feel in relationship. Mm-hmm. And we also, I think one of the main difference is we are fixers. So when there is a problem, when a woman or when a partner express how she feels, men have a tendency that they think that they need to fix something. So either they feel uncomfortable because they don't know how to fix it, so they feel like a failure, or either they're going to try to solve something or to fix something, when in case what your partner and the woman in that case, what they want is just to feel acknowledged and to feel validated with how they feel. That's it. Most of the time, I think we could just hear each other and just hold space for each other. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think that's the main difference. And also, I read something, I don't remember who wrote that recently, but it really resonated with me. It's men tend to run away when they think they are not in control or where they think they're going to fail. If they think they're going to succeed, great. But if they think they could fail, they run away. I mean, run away, not literally run away, but they start to shut down, or they start to more internalize and not saying how they feel. So that's my take on the difference of the main differences. Of course, there are so many.
And I think, firstly, my response to that is to dispel stereotypes, because truthfully, when I entered the dating world, in terms of serious relationships, I don't know, about 4 years ago, I was a stereotypical male dynamic in relationships, and my partner fulfilled the female dynamics in a lot of ways of what you're describing. And so he would be the one who was more sensitive, coming to me with feelings, asking me how I was feeling. I would be clueless, sitting there like, oh, I don't know how I feel. This guy wants to talk about feelings. I don't know. And so same thing, and not knowing how to hold space with him, not knowing how to validate, not knowing how to enter that world. And I would do the same thing. So it's the fight or flight response, or stonewalling, all these different common words that we've heard. Yes. So yes, definitely a pattern of shutting down and wanting to retreat, maybe mentally or physically, go for a walk, go to the gym. I hear that really commonly for people whose dynamic fits into that. And I think if there is a difference in dating, gender aside, because again, I'm a test to both, is trying something different. Mm-hmm. It's going to be hard because it's not your go-to. So for me, it was the same thing. I had to learn how to sit and listen to how they were feeling without wanting to fix how he was feeling, without feeling personally attacked, like I am wrong, because that was the story I was telling myself, is I'm inherently wrong. So of course this guy's right to call me out and say, like, this is how I'm feeling and I just think I caused it. Maybe that's what most men feel, and you can answer to that. If it feels like a personal attack or if it's really just that protector, provider instinct. But I think for anyone who that's triggered in, it's just learning how to do something different. So telling your partner, hey, you know, when you want to talk about feelings, I feel like I don't know what to do. I sit there and I feel helpless. So starting to label those feelings that you might feel in those moments. And same for them, if they're experiencing the dynamic on the opposite side, is saying, hey, I don't know how to connect with you. I want to talk about feelings, but you seem like this. So I think the real answer to this is, if there's differences, is just bringing them together and being vulnerable together. That's really all it's about, is being vulnerable and not just falling straight to your patterns without really thinking about them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But it takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable. It takes a lot of courage, and we all need to get out of our comfort zone, right? To be curious and to create a space where we feel both safe to express how we feel, right? And I think one of the things that I see most of the time with my clients is they don't allow themselves to express how they feel, because they think that how they feel is not supposed to be the way they should feel. When in fact, I do believe that however you feel is telling you something is valid. however you feel is valid. You feel angry, you feel okay, you feel not okay. If you feel that way, it's telling you something about yourself. It's reflecting something about your personality. So we have to be able to validate how we feel first, and then being able to be in a conversation with someone else that can be also hold the space and validate our experience or how we feel, whether we agree or whether we understand or not. And I think that's I'm all about conscious relationship, and for me, conscious relationship is about that. Mm-hmm. It's really about holding a space and being able to validate the other person in their experience. Because I came to the conclusion in my own experiences, because I've been divorced a few times, that who am I to judge the experience of others? Who am I to know what they have in head and what they have been through their life? Mm-hmm. You know? So I really step back a lot, and I really am compassionate first for myself, but also for others. And if they feel that way, doesn't matter if I think it's wrong or right, because it's irrelevant. If they feel that way, there is a reason. There is something for them to be expressed, to be acknowledged, and to be validated. And I think that's one of the missing points in most of the relationship and probably dating. So it's something that I like to bring up very early when I date someone, because this is how I want to be in a relationship. But of course, it took me 50 years to come to that experience and to that conclusion, Nikki. So what I really like about your takes and about what you shared today, I feel you're really authentic and really passionate about that.
Thank you.
And you really have an open mind about how to be in a relationship and how to date. But for me, I'm not the same generation, and I find it really refreshing. So I want to really thank you for that and acknowledge you for that.
Thank you.
So we're almost at the end of the recording. Do you have anything else that you want to tell our audience about dating or about whatever you want to tell them?
I think we touched on some really important things. I think I might just end it with connecting some of the things you just said, because I felt like they were very important. Mm-hmm. I think that, as you said, just being able to practice with yourself first is the biggest takeaway. Mm-hmm. So as you said, in the case of being vulnerable, it's not judging your own feelings first, is mm-hmm. sitting and acknowledging your own weak spots, not having the inner critic jump right in and say, don't feel that way, or whatever the judgment is there. Mm-hmm. So learning how to handle your own space first. And then the whole idea of conscious dating, I think, is really new, and that's why we're both so passionate about it. And like you said, it took 50 years for you, but this wasn't really a conversation a few years ago, as far as I understand, and something very new. And I just really encourage everyone out there, anyone who's listening, to help spread the word, help provide space for other people to do this. So talk about it with your friends, ask questions, maybe say where you don't feel strong yet in this sort of intentional dating space, or just really working on that inner piece. So doing the self-reflections, and really, I know one thing I was going to say too before we go into dating is something that I found really helpful, and I think we've already kind of touched on it, is yes, we can go out there and look for these qualities in another person, but really say you create this little intentional checklist of what you're looking for, what would be authentic dating for you, is looking in and seeing, do I have those qualities first as well? So again, it's just keep turning it inward. And the more inner work you do, the more you're going to find satisfying relationships across the board. And what I mean by that checklist is, so say, for example, you say, I don't want to date someone who parties. I want someone who's really responsible and driven in work and passionate. Yet you tend to have most of your weekend activities are going out to drink. You snooze your alarm a lot. You're late for work. You watch Netflix and don't really know what you're passionate about yet you're looking for someone who has those qualities. Well, instead of spending so much time searching for that person who fits them, let's take it in again. How do I get passionate? How do I get driven? How do I get more responsible and change my habits to fit into my ideal person? At the end of the day, it really is about, am I the ideal version of what I'm looking for? Am I highly aligned with my values? A lot of times we want to put it on other people in dating, and I think that's where the misalignment and inauthentic dating experiences come from, is we're missing the point. And the point is just to look at ourselves and change our own patterns.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. That was beautiful. That was really beautifully said. I wish you a very good luck, and I'm sure you're going to be an excellent counselor or therapist, whatever you go through that, because you have a lot of experience and a lot of insights. I'm very surprised by your age and already have a lot of insight like that. I wish at your age that I would have so much wisdom. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for your authenticity.
Thank you.
I'm sure you have inspired a lot of people today. We will watch this recording. So thank you very much for that.
It's been a pleasure, Eric. I really appreciate you asking me to do this. It's been fun.
Thank you. Okay, guys, so we are at the end of the recorded session. I always end up saying that when you open your heart, you have all the love you need. So keep expanding your heart, seek for joy, live in peace, and I'll see you next time with a new guest. Bye-bye.